A murder mystery solved by a shocking twist. Michael Severance, a dedicated U.S. Air Force crew chief, suddenly vanished, and days later, his body was discovered in a pond, weighed down with more than 140 pounds of debris and 41 stab wounds inflicted after death. But how did this happen? And who was responsible? In this video, we'll uncover the disturbing truth piece by piece, so stay with us until the end, because every detail in this case is a key to solving the mystery. Michael Severance was born on July 20, 1980, in Lincoln, near Lee in Penobscot County, Maine. He graduated from Lee Academy with honors, remembered as both a dedicated student and a competitive, adventurous young man. After high school, he joined the U.S. Air Force and worked his way up to the rank of Staff Sergeant, serving as a crew chief on C-130 transport aircraft. His military career took him across the globe, completing 5 tours in the Middle East, 3 of them in direct support of the global war on terror. His service eventually brought him to West Texas, where he was stationed at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene. Outside of his military life, Michael loved the outdoors and thrived on adventure. He enjoyed fishing, skiing, and ATV riding. Friends and colleagues described him as well-liked, optimistic, dependable, and selfless, a man who always put others first. At just 15 years old, he suffered the devastating loss of his mother, but instead of succumbing to grief, he stepped up to support his younger brother, who was only 11 at the time. In September 2004, Michael Severance married Wendi Mae Davidson, a woman who grew up on a ranch just outside San Angelo. Wendi was cheerful, responsible, and determined from a young age. At just 7 years old, she had already decided she wanted to become a veterinarian. In high school, she volunteered at a local veterinary clinic while excelling in her studies, and her dedication earned her a place at Texas A&M University, one of the toughest veterinary schools in the country. During college, Wendi gave birth to her first son from a previous relationship, but still pushed forward and eventually earned her veterinary medicine degree. After graduating, she returned to San Angelo to work at the Advanced Animal Care Clinic on Sherwood Way. In 2003, at just 24 years old, she opened her own clinic. It was in San Angelo that Michael and Wendi met. Their relationship developed quickly, and they soon had a child together. Wendi, now a mother of 2, struggled to juggle her demanding veterinary practice with family responsibilities, a balancing act that left her under constant stress, often leading to arguments with Michael. However, these disagreements didn't appear to damage their bond, and they continued living a simple but happy life in an apartment located just behind Wendi's veterinary clinic. But life was far from ideal. Wendi's family did not approve of Michael. Her mother believed he wasn't good enough for her daughter, describing him as rude and obnoxious. The relationship between Michael and Wendi's family was never good, but Michael didn't let that affect his relationship with Wendi. They carried on with their lives as usual until January 2005, when the calm city of San Angelo, Texas, became the scene of a shocking true crime case. As 2005 began, Michael Severance, a dedicated airman with big plans for the future, suddenly disappeared. His family in Maine had been preparing a wedding reception for January 16th to celebrate his recent marriage to Wendi. But just days before the trip, Wendi told them that Michael was missing. She explained that she had taken her 2 sons to visit her parents and returned to find him gone, his truck and cell phone still at home. At first, friends and family believed Michael would return soon, but as the days went by, worry turned into fear. The search for him grew more urgent, and San Angelo quickly became the center of a disturbing mystery. What began as a routine missing person case soon took a darker turn. Investigators found repeated calls on Michael's phone from a woman, sparking suspicion of an affair, but she was soon identified as nothing more than an old friend. During this time, Wendi's family told her that Michael might try to take their son, and they urged her to file for divorce and get a restraining order against him. With growing concerns and unsettling advice from her family, investigators began questioning Wendi and her family, searching for any clue that could explain what happened to Michael. During the investigations, Wendi's family kept certain details to themselves. The only remark that caught the investigators' attention came from Wendi's mother, who admitted, "I'm not going to lie, I didn't like him. Never did, never will." But as Michael's wife, the person who lived with him day in and day out, offered details she believed might help solve the case and bring her husband back. Wendi told investigators that in the days before Michael disappeared, he had been drinking more than usual and seemed very worried about going back to combat. She said he even talked about leaving the military and running away to Canada. She also explained that he was under a lot of stress from work and family. His long 3-hour daily drive made him start using caffeine pills to stay awake, and she noticed he was also drinking in the afternoons. At the time, she didn't think it was a big problem, but later, she admitted it wasn't normal. When Michael went missing, he was on leave, which delayed a formal investigation by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations until his scheduled return date. When he failed to report back to base, he was marked as absent without leave, giving OSI the authority to investigate him for desertion. Because OSI operates under military rules, it could take investigative steps that civilian police could not. One of these steps was obtaining approval to place a tracking device on Wendi's vehicle. The reasoning was that if Wendi's claim was true, that Michael might be deserting, she could be helping him hide, and tracking her movements might lead them to him. But what investigators uncovered was nothing like what they expected. That small decision, attaching a tracker to her car, would flip the case upside down and change the direction of the investigation entirely. But before I tell you how, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. The GPS tracker placed on Wendi's car showed frequent visits to a ranch in northern Tom Green County, about 20 miles from San Angelo. On January 15, 2005, she was seen trying to enter the ranch but was turned away. When asked about her visits, particularly to the property's pond, Wendi became evasive and defensive. After this, the case began moving much faster, and investigators were finally closing in on the truth. On January 24, 2005, OSI investigators seized Wendi Davidson's computers. What they found was alarming. Her search history showed questions like how to pass a polygraph test and research on how a body decomposes in water. When asked about it, Wendi brushed it off, claiming she was only looking up information while volunteers were out searching for Michael. After that interview, Wendi finally turned to her brother, Michael Davidson, a Texas game warden. In a shocking confession, she told him that she had found Michael dead in their living room. Afraid that a family member might have been responsible, she admitted to moving his body and sinking it in the pond at the 4 Sevens Ranch. Marshall was stunned. "Wendi, I'm a cop. You can't be telling me this," he said. But Wendi insisted she hadn't killed Michael. She swore she only acted to protect her family, fearing one of them would be blamed. She asked Marshall for help, and he promised to contact an attorney, but instead, he went straight to the authorities. The next day, Michael's body was recovered from the pond. It had been weighted down, with over 140 pounds of debris, including a boat anchor, car parts, tires, a wheel rim, and cinder blocks. He had been stabbed 41 times. And then came the most shocking part. The autopsy revealed that Michael had been sedated with veterinary drugs before his death. He died from acute intoxication caused by chemicals typically used to euthanize animals. The 41 stab wounds had been inflicted after death. Justice of the Peace Eddie Howard explained that these post-mortem cuts were likely made to release gases from decomposition, a disturbing method often used to keep bodies from floating to the surface. At this point, everything started to fall into place. Wendi's repeated trips to the ranch, her unsettling online searches, and now the discovery of veterinary drugs, all of it lined up, pointing investigators directly to her. It didn't take long until toxicology reports confirmed investigators' concerns. The drugs were traced back to Wendi's veterinary clinic, pointing to careful planning and premeditation. During a police search of the clinic, records showed she had administered a large dose of phenobarbital to a dog. But when investigators checked, the owner said the injection was never given. This discovery is linked directly to the same drugs used to sedate Michael. Wendi, however, continued to deny killing him. She admitted only to disposing of his body, making the vent cuts, and transporting him to the pond. She explained, "I knew that air makes bodies float, so I decided to make holes in the body, vent holes, so that air could escape." She described rolling Michael's body into a large cardboard box, struggling to lift it, and finally building a ramp from 2 boards on the tailgate of her truck. With her 2 young sons asleep in their car seats, she drove through the night with her husband's body in the flatbed. At the pond, she tied cinder blocks to the handles of the box and pushed it downhill toward the water. When the box fell apart, she tied the weights directly to Michael's body before leaving the scene. For many, it was almost impossible to believe. The same veterinarian admired for her compassion toward animals was now at the center of a brutal murder investigation. But what came next was even harder to accept. The reason behind the killing was as strange as it was unexpected. Wendi Davidson was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. In October 2006, she entered a no-contest plea to the charges. One of her attorneys, Melvin Gray, explained that taking the no-contest plea, in which a defendant does not admit guilt, would allow Wendi to continue with her appeal. "There are real issues as to who committed the murder," Gray said. Following the charges, Wendi's defense filed a motion to exclude evidence gathered from the GPS tracking device placed on her car, arguing it had been obtained unlawfully. Legally, law enforcement is required to secure a court order before installing such a device. The prosecution argued that Michael's AWOL status justified the permissions and approvals granted to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations to use the tracker. The judge sided with the prosecution, ruling that the tracker was lawfully installed and that the evidence it provided could be used in court. When the judge declared the evidence admissible, Wendi collapsed onto the courtroom floor, sobbing for several minutes while one of her attorneys tried to comfort her. Initially, Wendi faced a possible sentence of 9 to 99 years. Through a plea agreement, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison, which means her release date will be in 2031. Michael's younger brother said after the trial, "Although we're happy with the outcome, we're still deeply saddened. No amount of punishment can bring him back to us." Wendi was denied parole in 2019. The parole board wrote in its decision that she poses a continuing threat to public safety. In an interview from prison, Wendi declared, "I did not kill him. I want my side of the story. I want people to know what did and didn't happen. I did what I did. I think it was horrible. I made a bad choice. There were better choices to be made, but I still didn't kill him." She added, "I think my husband was a victim. I think my children were victims. I think Mike's family are victims." Since her incarceration, Wendi has been estranged from her children, who were just 2 and 5 years old at the time. She has not seen them since. A local court granted guardianship of the children to Wendi's parents, ruling that there was no credible evidence to support increased contact between Wendi and the children. The court stated, "It is beyond dispute that Davidson murdered the minor child's father and subsequently attempted to cover up this egregious crime. Increased contact with the children would be only to their detriment and not to their benefit." Wendi is now serving her sentence, her life and family torn apart. But the biggest mystery wasn't just how Michael was killed, it was why. And when the reason finally came out, it shocked everyone. Just before Michael's disappearance, a serious argument erupted between the couple. Michael had taken their young son and driven to Abilene without telling Wendi. Panicked, she called him again and again, but he never picked up. When he finally returned, Wendi's fear turned into fury. She demanded that he should never take their child without telling her. Michael, however, stood his ground, insisting he had every right to take his son wherever he wanted. And that's why her parents told her to file for divorce and get a restraining order against him, just as I mentioned earlier. Now that you know the supposed reason behind Michael's death, do you really think this was enough for Wendi to kill him? Or could there be something deeper, something still hidden that no one truly knows? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Wendi's case was shocking, but believe it or not, there's an even darker story. It's about Aileen Wuornos, one of the most infamous female serial killers in history. If you want to see just how far she went, make sure to check out that video next. Thanks for watching.